Why is 7 out of 10 a bad score? Hope you're having a good PAX. Are you all having good PAX? I don't know. Sounds like you are. All right. I am Edmund Tran, and I am the editor of GameSpot.com. And with me today, I have a bunch of journalists and writers and presenters who I greatly admire and respect as people and professionals. To my right, I have Lucy O'Brien, Lucy James is my colleague. Lucy O'Brien, the entertainment editor at IGN, and a writer of great views. Round of applause for Lucy, please.
Hi, everyone.
I also have Nish Richardson, who some of you may recognize from the TVs. He is a presenter on A Good Game, and a show that famously rates games with rubber chickens, I believe.
Not anymore. They rate
Previously. Oh,
What
there you
that kid
go.
said. So, the rubber chickens were not my idea. I take no responsibility for that.
Round of applause for Nish, please.
I appreciate you pronouncing the H at the end, but it's just Nick is fine.
Nick.
But Niche is acceptable because that's
I
what
like
half,
niche, 'cause
half the
like
people.
niche, you know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like-
yeah,
yeah.
that's fine.
You took a punt, man.
I took a punt, yep. Dave Milner, the editor of Game Informer Australia, one of the most widely read print mags, I'd say, probably in the world, right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, round of applause for David Milner, please.
Thanks for coming.
And on the end, we have James O'Connor, a freelance journalist and critic who tells me he has written up to 1,000 reviews for a variety of publications, including Hyper, PC Power Play, Edge, Red Bull, whatever. Heaps of things, everything. Round of applause for James, please. Now, with a crowd this large, I'm assuming that there are going to be a lot of questions. But we'll save those to the end, about 20 minutes. But do think of them, and there'll be 2 mics on either side. So once the time comes, please do come up to those mics for questions. So to kick off, we're going to talk about game reviews in general, how we think about game reviews, how our outlets do game reviews, and the idea of 7's average scores, what is a good review, what's a bad review, and so on and so forth. But the thing I'm most interested in with this panel in particular is how different games publications actually go about reviewing games. So what's your scoring scale like? When you review a game, how do you approach it? And basically, what do you look for, and how do you write it, and how do you come to your final conclusion? Let's start with you, Lucy.
Oh, God.
Okay.
All right, well, okay, so I'll give you a little bit of a rundown about how we do things at IGN. Basically, we have a score word attached to every number. So for us, a 7 is actually good. And a lot of the time when I'm reviewing a game, I sort of don't think about the number so much as I think about the score word. So for us, 7 is actually a good game. It's a game that has flaws, and obviously in the review we will outline those flaws for you. But it's also a game that we enjoyed and we would recommend you pick up if you're interested in that genre or whatever. So, 7, unfortunately, it's kind of one of those unfortunate little guys. He's kind of had a bad reputation because the scale of games reviews seems to go sort of bad, 7, pretty average, 8, 9, good, 10, masterpiece.
Yeah.
So, 7 has unfortunately got this reputation of being average. But at IGN, a 7 is good, goddammit.
Yeah, and that's actually the same at GameSpot. 7 for us is a good game, and I feel like most games are pretty good games. Like there are a lot of good games out there.
Yeah.
I think
No one goes up. No one's going out of their way to make a sucky game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no. Overwatch is a good game. I think that's it, though.
You cynical bastard.
There is one game I can recall that was explicitly made for the purpose of being a bad game, and that was Do Not Buy This. And what they did was, it was a game for the ZX Spectrum, and how they did it was people sent in game submissions. And what they did was they released 6 of the worst ones on a compilation tape and put it on the ZX Spectrum. And I am serious.
Sounds like a 7 to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for that. Let's go on to Dave. What about Game Informer? How do you review games?
Okay, so we, like IGN, have a keyword attached to every score, and we're one of those 7 is an average publications. Sorry. and I know that sounds weird, but I think there are very good reasons for that. And part of it is because your 1s, 2s, and 3s, and 4s need to be reserved for games that just don't work. There is a technical component in this medium that you don't get in cinema. You never sit in a theatre and fail to see moving pictures. You never pick up a book and one chapter's in Portuguese. Like, that sort of stuff does happen with games. It doesn't happen often, but that's why 5 is not quite average on our scale. So yeah, average 8 is very good, 9 is superb, and 10 is outstanding. And just in terms of when we are writing these reviews, the numbers come into it right at the end. I really think we all spend a whole lot longer thinking about the words, and I know everyone else flips to the number first, but I think every single critic that's ever reviewed a game would spend 90% of their time thinking about what they're saying, and the rest of the time coming up with the score. That's not that we don't think about it, but it's a little reductive, just distilling it into a 10-point scale.
I actually score a game based off what I think of the first reveal trailer, and then I go into the review just making the game fit the score that I've already given. So
he gave No Man's Sky a 10.
yeah.
That's how we're reviewing Bethesda games from now on too, just based on the trailers.
That's really interesting because, yeah, when I typically write a review, I don't think about a score. When GameSpot writes reviews, we typically write the text, and we send that around to our colleagues and our writers to give it a look-see, give it a QA, and then they'll tell me what they get out of that text. So this feels like a 7, this definitely feels like a 9, or like so on and so forth.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. James, you've worked for so many different outlets. Is there much variation to how different publications approach reviews?
For sure. I think, as you've all sort of said, scores are largely codified. They match up to certain feelings and understandings of, there's no scientific basis of these numbers, so different publications interpret these numbers slightly differently. And that can lead to some interesting things that I have to think about as a freelance when I'm writing for a lot of different publications. One of the places I write for is a kids magazine. I'm the games editor of Mania magazine, and I don't think I've ever given a game below a 4 in Mania, because if a game is worse than that, then I just don't review it. And the only times I've ever given it 4 is if a game is really bad and I think kids might want it and I feel like I need to warn them not to buy it, like a Tony Hawk Ride. I get that a 4 back in the day. My absolute favorite scoring system that I have ever worked with is a website called ZAM that I started working for this year that is based out of the US. Their review system, at the end, the verdict is simply yes or no. And yes. I don't tend to think of reviews as me telling you whether you need to buy the game or not, because ultimately there are many different factors. Some people will buy the game regardless of what you say. Economic factors factor in, time factors. So I tend to think of a review of saying whether a game is worth your time or not, whether it's worth looking into and finding out if you're interested in it. And just boiling it down to a yes or no right at the end of a review is actually a really great way of coming off the fence, I find. Like, I remember I gave Mirror's Edge Catalyst a no earlier this year, and it was really refreshing needing to make that decision, because otherwise I think I would have just given it like a 6 probably and sat on the fence. So yeah, there's a lot of variation in different scoring systems. Like a Game Informer, I write for them. I tend to score maybe a little higher in Game Informer than I might in another publication, just because they have a very clear outline of what each score means. Some others, like the Hyper magazine, back when they did reviews in the magazine, a much looser system. It was a little open to the interpretation of the writer, I always felt, in that one. So yes, for sure, there's big variations between publications, and as a freelancer, I have to think about that all the time, every day. There's only a handful of reviews that I've ever given that I've later regretted the scores on. Do other people have that? Do you have numbers that you regret giving to games?
Absolutely.
Like, there's a game called Resonance on the PC. It's like a point-and-click adventure game. I gave it an 8. I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes thinking, God, I should have given that a 9. That game was really good. I gave Bastion a 7. That's an 8 out of 10 game.
I gave Homefront an 8.
Why?
I don't know. I honestly, it's something I actually can't explain. I mean, I like to think of myself as a good critic. You know, obviously that's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I temporarily lost my mind and gave Homefront an 8.
Nick, tell me about how the ABC approaches reviews with Good Game, because most people might be under the impression that most of the presenters do all the reviewing. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is. So, occasionally for giant games or multiplayer games, we'll get everyone involved. But we're in a bit of a different position where Good Game doesn't review everything because we just don't have the screen time. But also, people are reading people will read a Lucy review, and there'll be heaps of people out there who are like, this is Lucy and I know her opinion, and so I'm going to read this review with that context. But there's also a huge amount of people, probably more people, who are like, this is what IGN thinks, so you're under the banner of IGN. With Good Game, because it's more personality driven, because you just see faces, the reviews are more just about what the person thinks. So play the game, we hammer out notes, turn that into a script, and it's super, super personal. And then you read it out in front of everyone, and then we sort of talk over, kind of the same as what you were talking about, where it's we have people suggest what they think the star would be, the star rating, except it's out of 5, which we 100% need to get in the 5 versus 10 battle, because I think 10 rating score is kind of nuts, and led to the 7 and the bullshit 7 that then everything under a 5. I don't know what the difference between a 1-star and a 4-star game is, but that's kind of how we do it.
I think we also shot ourselves in the foot 25 years ago when we started scoring things out of 100. It creates this false impression of science and objectivity, whereas 5 stars doesn't have that connotation. That's you're talking about art, and that's my opinion.
Reviewing out of 100 is kind of fun, though, because you reach the number at the end, you're like, how the hell did I come to this number? How did I decide 77 was the score this game deserved?
Lucy. Above 100.
I don't think that happens.
It happened
That
once.
doesn't happen.
It's happened. There was once a review that went 800.
Mate, I'm going to cut you off there, and we can save your questions to the end. Lucy, does IGN still have a decimal scoring system?
We do. We are a 100-point scale.
And I've always wondered how you come up with those final decimal points.
Well, it's very unscientific, let me tell you that. For me, sometimes a game, if it's a 6, but it has a couple of really cool ideas that I think are worth a little extra more, but it's not a 7, so it's an average game, but it's not a good game, but it's not a really bad average game.
The world is on fire.
Yeah, it's a pretty okay average game. So, God, it's so stupid. I know when I say it out loud, I sort of hate myself.
So is it kind of like their footnotes? You go, this is the score is a 7, but you go, oh, it got an extra point because really nice particle effects in one scene.
Yeah. It's very much a sort of, well, it deserves a bone. I feel like the point thing is definitely throwing the game a little bone there.
Yeah.
It's a small one.
And again, these are pretty codified. If you give a game an 8.9, that's like a statement. It's saying you're so
and
close,
8.9
you're there.
is a total middle finger.
And then
really.
beyond the 9.0, any score beyond that, there's a fairly big difference between a 9.1 and a 9.5 in the way there isn't between a 7 and a 7.4.
Or an 8.8 and a 9.0.
Well, yes. So I don't know if you guys know about this, but I reviewed Uncharted 4 for IGN, and
Incorrectly.
We do preliminary scores, basically based on, especially if the game has a online multiplayer component, we'll do a preliminary score, if we had to score it now, this is what we'd give it. So I played through the campaign and I gave it an 8.8, and the internet went after me with pitchforks. I got really drunk that night. And then I played through the multiplayer and I was like, this is fun. This is worth 0.2 more.
Now you caved into the pressure.
Oh, shut up. No, I didn't. And the
This
final
was Homefront all over again.
the final score was a 9, and people were perfectly happy with that.
Right.
So it's extraordinary how much 0.2 can make such a difference.
Well, nobody was buying an 8.8 game.
Let's talk about review regret. Have you ever? We touched on it earlier, but when you play a game and you review it, you want to get it out to the people as soon as possible, so people know about it. But games stay with you for a very long time. Have you guys ever reviewed a game and then a week later, a month later, thought the game deserved way more or way less even?
Yeah. I mean, I think
Uncharted?
Shut up. I think for me, I reviewed Until Dawn, which is a game some of you may be familiar with. It's a Sony exclusive. It's a horror game, which is a genre I'm very fond of. And I think I gave it a 7 or maybe a 7.5. And upon reflection, I actually think that
The game was great.
It deserved higher than that. Like I think that, I'm not. It doesn't keep me awake at night, but it had such clever ideas, and it really gave you a sense of a real sense of choice and consequence that I think we're missing from a lot of
Absolutely.
those sort of quantum dream. But it was a successful game, and I think I underscored it just a little.
Well, not even a sense of choice and consequence. Like actually, like
Actual
it didn't make you
yes.
feel as though you're being funneled into this thing. Like I played that game and I managed to keep everyone alive, except right at the end where I killed the chick from Heroes. And
she was the
no,
best
I
one.
killed her. That's not a spoiler. Like none of
That's
you,
true.
like you might have been fine. And that was absolutely devastating.
Yeah. And she was the best character. As
She
well.
was the best character. I mean, it doesn't. The eyes are still terrifying, but the rest of it was pretty cool.
I have one, and I don't regret the score, but I got a few things I said. I reviewed the first Titanfall, which I really liked, and I gave it a high score. I gave it a 9.25. But
0.25.
9.25,
Where did you get that
very
from?
scientifically a 9.25.
It's a fun system to work with.
It's a great system. But what I didn't realize was as soon as I'd finished that game, literally a week later, I just stopped playing it. I lost all interest. And that was the long tail that just wasn't there. And that's a very hard thing to work out when you're trying to review a game sometimes prior to release. This wasn't prior to release. I had a few days before we were going to print while it was live so we could test it on live servers, which is also another thing we should possibly talk about because that's important. But as I was writing that text, I'm like, I'm going to play this game all year. I was convinced, and then a week later, I was like, not that.
But do you feel like your time? Do you feel like you should have given it a lower score because you didn't stay with it, but the time you had with it was so fun? Like you could give a game that was 2 hours long a 9.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
Had a blast
I mean,
with it.
that's a great question, but I guess my point more is it's very hard for any reviewer to work out how long the tail of these systems are.
to know the future. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where games often have massive updates. For example, I know GameSpot gave League of Legends a 6 about 10 years ago.
It still deserves a 6. Dota forever! Dota forever!
But there are so many instances where games just get better with life, or the user base is there and helps a game get better, and so on and so forth. Now, in the age of the internet, you get a lot of feedback, and we talked about this with Lucy as well. Do you guys ever get positive or memorable feedback from any of your reviews? Well, maybe we can start with someone else. David, with print, do you ever get angry letters to the editor?
We do, but if you're reading a print mag in 2016, you are a classy individual. And we just genuinely get a whole lot of we get a lot of really nice feedback. We have a great community, and I think part of that is there's a filter. They know that their vitriol isn't going to get read by anybody but me. So it takes a lot of
Guts.
Personal Dave hate.
Yeah, and we get that. But it takes a lot of effort to put pen and paper, and I get really thoughtful, concise, interesting letters that I end up publishing in a letter section because that's fantastic stuff. So I guess I'm kind of the only person here that doesn't get the pitchforks on the internet a whole lot, which is great. I love it.
James, do you get pitchforks?
I've gotten some pitchforks. I feel like most of the positive feedback that I've gotten from people has been for the most negative reviews that I've written. Like, I wrote a review of Beyond Two Souls for Oz Gamers. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. Did not like that game. People still come up to me today and tell me how much they enjoyed that review. Like, I remember I reviewed 007 Legends for Hyper Magazine, and the verdict at the end was a turgid, tragic piece of shit. People really liked that. They still quote that back to me occasionally. When I say I like a game, people don't care. I hate a game. People are into that.
We don't get that much hate. I guess we get a different kind of hate. We get people who hate us as people, which kind of hurts way more. Like, I don't really give a shit what you think about what I think about a game, but when you tell me I'm a bad human being, then that actually hurts. But I think it's actually because it's so personality driven, people understand why I might not like a game, why Bajo doesn't like a game, why Steph does like a game. Like, you go in going, oh, okay, I already know you're not going to like this, so you're probably not going to review it. Or if you don't like it, I can understand it. If you do like it, I know exactly why that is. So they're much more forgiving because it's kind of like your friend doesn't like it as opposed to just the stranger on the internet. Like, you just need to whack your face up as the big picture on each article. Like maybe holding a puppy. And then like, how could you hate someone with a puppy?
A rescue.
And that's a very strong thread, I think, that's going through what we're talking about here, is that reviews are definitely subjective opinions of a certain individual, and most of the vitriol that we get at GameSpot, and I assume IGN as well, is people thinking that we've reviewed the game incorrectly. We haven't gone through it scientifically or objectively enough, but that's certainly not the case, is it, folks?
Well, one of my greatest examples of crazy commentator logic was the Uncharted 4 review, because I'd also reviewed Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is obviously a game in a similar genre, but the difference is one has... This is according to the comment section. The difference is that one had a female protagonist and one had a male protagonist. So I scored Rise of the Tomb Raider 9.3, and I scored Uncharted for a 9. And so the comment sections were telling me that the reason I had scored, and they were like, she doesn't even realize, she did it unconsciously, was that I scored Rise of the Tomb Raider higher because Lara Croft has a vagina and Nathan Drake has a penis. And seriously, that was a really, like, that was one of the big things. I remember, like, one comment saying that got tons of likes, and, you know, they were like, oh, because she's a feminist and that's the reason why, and she doesn't even realize, blah, blah, blah. And it's just sort of like, God, do you people think that I'm insane?
Well, it's also incredibly telling about those people's mental state and how they view women, that they think a woman is worth 0.3. Yeah. Like,
is that codified in the scale? The 0.3 vagina bonus.
Yeah.
I think my favorite criticism that Lucy has ever gotten, that I recall actually, was on your Beyond Two Souls review, Lucy. I remember you told me somebody accused you of not liking the game very much because you were jealous of Ellen Page.
That's true. I did get told I was jealous of Ellen Page. To be honest, I am a little jealous of Ellen Page.
Who isn't? She's great.
Oh dear. Now let's talk about just our jobs as a concept. Like,
do we have
in this day and age, do people really need reviewers? With publishers coming out with their own sort of previews on games and stuff, and lots of like streamers and YouTube people like playing games online, and having so many avenues to go see games being played, and you being able to make your own judgment of it, are we still relevant?
No.
It's a question that keeps me awake at night.
I think 100%, but I fall more on the side of sort of streamers and Let's Play. I do way more of that than I do actual reviewing. But I insanely value reviews, because I know that the bullshit I talk about while I'm streaming a game is nothing compared to like the analysis and critique that you put into when you're actually reviewing something. And I think that the space for both things to exist, that you need a cultural language to frame how you look at art. I mean, really, how you look at anything. And that's what reviews give you. I don't know if necessarily, like, actually, I think scores aren't important, but I think being able to develop a way to talk about video games as an art form is really important, and that comes out of not, hey, is it fun, but like, why is it fun? What is it trying to do? What is it doing that's different? And that's what you get from reviews that I think is most important. Like, just fuck the score off and just like leave the rest of the text.
I think every critic doesn't want to affect a game's sales. I don't think that's ever been the point. I think it is about creating a more interesting just discussion around a game. I think that's really... And so the industry might ask this question, are reviews still relevant? And the answer almost certainly is less so than before from their perspective, because there are far more voices. I mean, consensus matters. If everyone's saying this is good, then yes, it will affect sales. And if everyone says it's bad, it will as well. But perhaps the weight of one individual review matters far less. But that's a burden to be lifted from a critic's shoulders, really. None of us want to feel like, you know, we got a studio shut down and people got fired because of that. We just want to point out that this is an interesting game and point them towards the people that will enjoy it or won't, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still really important for consumers to have a critical voice that they can go to, that they trust. I think, you know, it's someone on Twitter said this, and it's very true that it's fast becoming the Godwin of games. Arguments around this, but No Man's Sky is a very good example of a game where I think it was very important for consumers to read reviews first, because the finished product was so different to what the marketing was promising us. So yeah, I mean, I will always think, and I personally go to Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic whenever I'm buying something or going to see a film. Like I want to know what I'm giving my money towards, you know. So yeah, I mean, I agree that like it's all expanding, but I think, as Nick said, there's definitely room for both of us. I understand also why studios choosing to shut us out. I mean, Bethesda is a sort of good case in point. Recently, I totally, you know, I'm not happy with that call, but I completely understand why Bethesda chose to make that decision. But yeah, I will always stand by the importance of critical voices, always.
Absolutely, I'm not going to argue with that at all. I think the Bethesda thing is really just the formalizing of something that a lot of people have been doing for a long time anyway.
It's been like an unspoken thing for ages.
And you know, when you're thinking about there's a whole lot of money involved in these games, from their point of view, why take the risk? You know, why invite someone to come who might not actually enjoy the game? You can see it from a business point of view, but I really would urge consumers to wait for those reviews. If they're late, I would, yeah.
Yeah, don't, like, pre-ordering is a really flawed system. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I don't think pre-ordering is, I think you should wait.
No, you gotta get those extra weapon skins.
That's true.
It's the only possible way to distribute them.
And as with anything, it's important to get a variety of inputs, a variety of opinions, a variety of perspectives on anything in life, really.
Do you think that with the Bethesda model, like if more companies jump on the formalization of what they're doing, does it change the way in which you will cover the games? Because I feel like if you can't review it before it comes out, then the longer it goes on, then the less valuable necessarily the score is. But then I think almost the more valuable the writing about the product is, the critique and how it, you know, you can write about it after it's come out, like the effect that it has, where it sits in the current state of what games are. Like, is that something that you could shift? You're moving away from necessarily reviews and more just like analysis of something.
You talking to me?
Well, generally,
I'm talking to anyone who doesn't make a TV show 2 weeks after the game has already come out.
I'm in print.
It does hurt big sites when we can't get a game review out day and date. You know, that's obviously when you get a lot of traffic. People always want to know whether or not a game is good. That said, you know, it's important for reviewers to obviously play the entirety of a game before giving an opinion. And I don't think any publication would skimp on that. And you know, some of the best games writing usually does come out weeks after a game has been released.
post-analysis.
It's post-analysis.
Once you've had
That's some of the greatest.
time
Like,
for
I
the
think-
ideas to stew.
Yeah, post-analysis is definitely something that we all do anyway. But reviews, yes, reviews are always, we want to get them out on time. So I'm actually reviewing Dishonored 2 next weekend.
How is it so far?
Oh, I haven't. But yeah, like that's the first sort of instance, I think, in my career at IGN where I haven't had, you know, time really. So I'm going to be playing it from midnight right through the next day, and that's going to, you know, it's changing the process for sure.
Yeah.
Because
It's just the freelancer lifestyle. Generally, you get the game the day it comes out,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then you can't sleep for a few days until the review's written.
And it definitely it affects the quality of the review, because the whole point at Game Informer, and I'm sure everywhere else, is to play the game the way a consumer would play it, provided you have enough time. Because if you're playing a game for 12 hours, no game is fun after that long, really. You get annoyed at the game, and you can't hold it against the game, because it is not the game's fault. It's this ridiculous deadline you have. So managing that's tricky, and this new policy it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
We might get some people coming up to the microphones for some questions, so if you do have a question, please line up. But as they do that, let's talk about us as consumers. How do you guys find out about things you are interested in consuming, like games and stuff? Personally, I just read written reviews. I love a good written review, and I love a good analysis.
Yeah, I'm still very old school, and I wonder if that's because we grew up with games magazines and games writing. You know, I absolutely appreciate a good streamer and a fun YouTube video and a good television show.
Thank you.
But yes, I'm still very much a written word person.
Nick?
I'm a combo of everything. Like, I just consume everything, and I don't care how I get it as long as it's good. So I highly value written stuff. I love long form writing, but I watch heaps of streamers. I watch lots of YouTube videos. As long as what they're doing is it's a first look at a game, or it's like an analysis or something. I'm not just watching like sick headshots in bullshit Shooter 4. So
Call of Duty.
which came out on Friday. So
I don't think I've ever watched a live stream, to be perfectly honest.
not even one of mine.
Oh no, all yours, but no one else's.
Yeah, well, I only trust you guys, obviously. So it's, I don't know. I tend to look over Metacritic, and I don't know. Everyone has sort of critics that they look up to and tend to particularly respect the opinion of. I think I read a lot of Eurogamer. That's my favorite website. I think. Because their opinions just happen to line up with mine very often. They gave Titanfall 2 an essential. That is an amazing game. So I should have talked about Titanfall 2 more on this panel. It's so good. If you could go out and buy Titanfall 2 so I have someone to play with online, it would mean a lot to me.
The voices that I like the most, you say that you really like Eurogamer. I'm the same, where I actually like the ones who are really opinionated and have a really strong voice in one direction. It doesn't need to be necessarily like a voice that I agree with, but where I go, oh, I can feel that whatever you're talking about, you're really passionate about the thing you're talking about. You're not just doing it because you got given that thing and you have to do it. It's actually like, no, all your writing is about like PC games that are under 300 megabytes that run on a MacBook Air. Like, that's your whole website. And like, that's awesome, because you're going to be the most informed person about that thing.
Just one more before we go to questions. Do you guys feel the need to see a game in action before you actually pick it up? I say no.
No, not at all.
No.
No.
If I knew the concept,
Yeah.
That's enough. If I know it has a cool hook or something.
And the reputation of the developer as well.
Yeah, totally.
I will
And what Game
blind buy
Informer said about it.
$1,000 worth of Blizzard products without like seeing a frame of what's going on.
Yeah.
How many
Interesting.
boxes?
Okay. Okay, we're going to go left, right. So up to the left. Mic on.
We got a cold mic up front. We got a cold mic.
No, talking to the mic, please.
So, you touched on this very earlier on how IGN has a word score attached to a number. I'm wondering the panel's thoughts on doing away with numerical systems and just using those word scores, considering there's similar fringe discussions in the film industry about doing away with numerical systems.
In a dream world, in my personal dream world, which also features Ellen Page.
But not David Cage.
I would love to do away with numbers and just have the word. I think right now numbers are too important for us to do away with, but the nitpicking that happens and the grief we get over numbers is just so tiring. And I think that with a score word, you can do this. You can do exactly the same job, except you're not going to be under that kind of scrutiny of, the numerical point. And as I said, the 0.2, for example.
I agree with all of that, but I think the one downside is consistency and archive. It's cool to be able to go and see what Game Informer said about the first game 20 years ago using the same scale. So if all of a sudden we change the scale, this long history of reviewing games becomes a little bit less relevant. And yeah, personally, I would love to not have numbers, but these are outlets that are all bigger than Lucy and bigger than me and bigger than Ed. Like, it's just a longer history.
Do you guys like the idea of doing something where you add like a play this if you like? Like comparing it not in a better than kind of way, but going like this will appeal to like X, Y, and Z tendencies.
We actually used to do that at IGN, but did away with it.
Yeah. Do you know why that got
I actually don't know. Yeah, it was kind of an annoying.
Yeah, right.
I kind of feel
GameSpot
like
definitely
if people
tried something where we used to do alternate takes, where you'd be like, I don't like shooters, but I tried Bioshock Infinite, and this is what I thought of it. But that became far too much work, and we got a lot of crap for it. Anyway, did that answer your question?
Sort of, like, I guess I would follow up, like, why, I guess you answered this, why you couldn't do away with the numerical.
Yeah, it's just
they don't own the giant companies.
Yeah. Thanks for your question.
Yet.
To the right.
Yeah, kind of following on that, like you've got Eurogamer, which has the recommended, essential, and the void, and you've got Kotaku, who has no score. Like, what's your thoughts on that? And is there like a conscious decision you didn't have someone who didn't actually, like a site which doesn't actually give scores on the panel?
What was the question again?
Like you've got Eurogamer with the recommended, essential, void, and Kotaku doesn't actually have any scores. And also kind of follow up, was there a conscientious decision not to have someone on the panel whose site doesn't actually not include scores? Like,
Okay.
You don't have Eurogamer who don't give scores.
Yeah.
Kotaku, sorry, like was a conscious decision to not bring in someone like the enemy. No, why did we not bring in the enemy? Was the answer?
well,
That's
something
the
like,
question,
why,
right?
Because
Like,
they-
why do you have not
Sarah's
someone,
wouldn't answer
someone who
his
doesn't
call.
do scores on the panel?
Basically, we couldn't get in touch with any of them. that's the long and short of it.
I don't think
Yeah,
it
we
was a
don't really
conscious
have many
decision.
people in Australia who don't use scores, I think. Like, I've done, like I said, when I write for ZAM, it's a yes or a no, which is not a scoring system, so that's enjoyable. I remember the one of the earliest sort of writing things I did was an e-zine called Pixel Hunt, and we worked at a system where we would attach a certain word to the end of every review instead of having a number, and I really enjoyed that. It was, I think it was bad, and then okay, and then different degrees of good. So that was that actually worked really well. But I guess we don't really have anyone in Australia who's doing anything like that, who is doing it on a big level at least. Like my first writing gig was for a street press, and we didn't put numbers on anything, but also nobody read us. So
Yeah, I mean,
maybe if you put numbers on, then that thing would still be around.
obviously Eurogamer doesn't really exist in Australia. Kotaku does, and Mark and Alex are good friends of ours.
But they don't write
But they
reviews.
don't typically write reviews, unfortunately. To the left.
Hey. Oh.
hello.
Does this
Hello.
work? Cool. Oh, it's a prof? Okay, cool. Hey guys. So first of all, thank you so much. It's been really cool, like talking to you guys and hearing about how you review game reviews. Like that's really cool.
Thanks. You're welcome.
So I wanted to ask, it was interesting what you were saying before about hype and the expectations of a game before it gets released, and then what happens after a game is released. And I think we've seen this a lot recently with games like No Man's Sky, Mirror's Edge, Catalyst, Pokemon Go. So I just really want to hear, how does the hype of a game kind of go into the review, and how does it affect your perception of a game when you're playing it? And do you have any ideas on how we can kind of help fix these like crazy polarizing expectations that have happened a lot recently with crazy hype trains?
It's a really good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a great answer?
As a critic, I find I don't get hyped that much these days because I'm just being onslaughted with so many games that at a certain point it becomes a road. I don't get excited about things the way I used to, which I'm leaning towards a happy point here. I don't know, just like getting...
Are you smiling so you don't cry?
James is dead inside.
Yeah, of course. We're all dead inside. That's part of the job.
Yeah, it's true.
But I don't know, like, I feel like hype is something that happens on a consumer level. People get very excited. We get excited about things, but it's not quite the same because we know once the game comes out, we're going to have to review it, and that's going to be hard work. And I can get excited about, the prospect of writing about something, but I don't necessarily get really amped up about playing a game the way I used to.
I think hype's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you go, like it does happen at the consumer level, and so if people are excited about something, then outlets will write about it because it's like that's the thing that everyone is talking about, and then that makes the consumer go, everyone's talking about this, let's talk about it more. But I think, for me, I think the biggest thing with hype is people just need to realize that marketing is there to lie to you the whole time, and that's not a bad thing. Like that's just their job. Their job is to make the thing that they're selling you look as cool as possible, and so they're going to show you the best possible versions of it. They're going to like throw it in your face in the coolest possible way. And you need to just go, okay, like you need to watch it and go, okay, cool. That's like a really beautiful lie. And if 30% of that is there, then this might be cool. But I think that it's really easy, and I do it as well, but it's super easy to just go, no, this is exactly what it's going to be because they made this thing. Why would they possibly like not why would they possibly lie to me? And then that's where expectations just sort of blow out proportion.
We had a panel on game trailers here yesterday, and the producers of trailers like that from Plastic Wax and some of the publishers who commissioned them all agreed that everyone should be viewing these trailers as advertisements for what they are. In terms of sort of cutting down hype, GameSpot until very recently used to have separate preview and review teams. So one team would go out and preview the games before release, and the review team would specifically only review the retail copy. That no longer exists, unfortunately, but when we do review a game, we make sure to have the package that goes out to the people.
Yeah, I'd say that hype actually affects our preview coverage more than our review coverage. Like, very separate from a review, you just lock yourself in a room and you don't read anything. But when you're previewing, you do have two responsibilities, and one is to try to analyze this game as objectively and critically as possible, but also keep in mind that it's not finished yet and it could really be broken. And you do have to occasionally give the developer the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I did a preview of Battlefield 4 6 months before it was about to get released, and it kept crashing, like constantly kept crashing. But because it's DICE, you do give them the benefit of the doubt, and they have 6 months to finish this thing. But we all know Battlefield launched, and it didn't work for almost a year. Yeah, so I think it's much more relevant when it comes to previews than reviews, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's actually, and not to harp on it, but that's the interesting thing about the Bethesda move, is that they're stopping the possible, getting a 8.9 review coming out the day the game launches, but what they're still going to get is all the coverage and the preview, and that's actually the most important thing for them because it's the thing that gets everyone talking about it. So, obviously you guys can't stop previewing Bethesda stuff, or maybe you can, and that would be sick. But that's the sort of, I think that's the weird balance right now, and so yeah, it's about just not buying into the bullshit that they're trying to spin you. Everyone's lying to you. Run. Even PAX is a lie.
None of us are here right now.
Awesome.
Thanks for your question. Over to the right.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so very interesting point you made about the updates. So we've noticed that some games, and some AAA companies even do this, where they release their game, and then 2 or 3 weeks later they introduce some pay-to-win mechanics, whether they be significant or insignificant. Have you ever thought about doing something where, when something like that happens, has it ever been tempting to kind of go back and be like, I'm updating my review? I know that hasn't happened yet, but have you ever considered that?
Well, we revise reviews, but we do it much later on. Like, we wouldn't do it if it was just a 3-week, something like a patch that came 3 weeks in. But we do, for example, look at Destiny. It's like
It's still terrible.
What are you talking about, man?
So why do you hate Destiny
I hate
so
Destiny
much?
too. I'm with Nick.
Oh, you guys are...
That's okay.
Destiny's great.
7 out of 10.
I actually did give it a 7. Yeah.
But yes, we do have a policy where we will go back if a game has dramatically changed. I mean, unfortunately, that doesn't affect what is sitting on Metacritic, and never will. And we do not change, like, we'll do another review, but we won't change that original score.
I know Polygon very frequently edits their reviews post to account for those patch changes. In terms of GameSpot, we tend, if those things do happen, we try to extend the review in progress because that final score does matter in the end.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if it is like a patch that comes in day one, obviously we will not post the final score until that patch is downloaded.
We're kind of limited because when it's in print, and you just can't change that. That's the review forever. But we do talk about things afterwards. We have some weird things where we don't give scores to MMOs because of that. Like, Game Informer still has not given World of Warcraft a score 10 years later.
7.
7, yeah, clearly a 7. So yeah, it's just about being aware of the possibility.
I remember reading a Nintendo 64 magazine back in the long past days of my youth, and every issue they would pick out 3 games that they had reviewed previously and just completely change the score.
Wow.
It was a weird thing. Like, I remember, like, if a sequel to a game came out, they might redo the original and say, nope, it's shit now. Take off 30%.
That must have been very confusing for readers.
Yeah, probably. Whole different field back then, though.
All right, next question.
Thanks for coming out, guys. It's been really entertaining.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Do you guys think that critics need to be good at games?
Oh,
Need to
do
be
critics
good.
need to be good gamers?
They need to be competent.
I
don't know
think
if it depends on the game to some extent.
it absolutely
yeah.
depends on the game. I mean, I, for one, could not play. I can't even say the genre because I'm so like racing games, racing car games.
Do you have a license in real life?
I do, but I haven't driven for 6 years
Nice,
since I
okay.
moved to Australia. I would be the last person on the planet to review a racing game because I have no interest in them, A, and B, I'm terrible at them. So yes, you need to be competent at what you're reviewing, absolutely. Do you need to be like top ranking in the world gamer hardcore person? No.
Because there is this funny conspiracy at the moment that Polygon isn't any good at games. Have you seen that?
Yeah, totally.
It was because of that Doom
That
video.
Doom video,
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is just such, like, because I'm fucking terrible at video games. And, like, I will beat all of you in Hearthstone. Like, I will take on every single person here and I'll knock you down. But I think it's about, but what I'm really good at is I'm really good at analyzing things. I'm really good at providing critique. I'm good at finding... And throwing people against the wall, which you saw me earlier.
Is that a specific game, Doge?
Yeah, that was an
Okay.
Owlboy. And then that was also someone who just got too close. I think it was the kid who was sitting here. I don't think you necessarily need to be amazing. You just need to be like appropriately informed about the thing that you're reviewing.
Can I also just quickly say, in Polygon's defense, I have nothing to do with Polygon. I don't actually really actively know anyone who works at Polygon. They're all based in the States. But that Doom video, that could have been made. The thing is with teams like IGN and GameSpot and Polygon and Kotaku, is we have huge teams. So the person that made that Doom video who was playing probably wasn't an editor. It was just probably some like video.
Hey kid, get up at midnight to play
Yeah,
Doom
hey
for
kid,
us.
hey kid, you do this for us.
I think it was actually Arthur Geese, but that
He denied it.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But also, like, there's all sorts of other things where you could be someone who plays shooters only on PC, and then you get sent a PS4 version of a game.
Yeah.
And so then you
Yeah,
need
that
to
all
use a
the time.
controller. And, like, I am way better with a mouse and keyboard than I am with a controller. And then you give me that, and it wrecks you. And then, but also, like, fuck you. Like, who gives a shit if he's not good at Doom? Like, you're not there to see the headshot. You're there to see the whole game and go, oh, I can do way better than that.
It's far more important to me that you know how to use a semicolon than that you've got a really good kill-death ratio.
They separate independent clauses, or they can be used to separate long, complicated items in a list. Those are the only 2 uses.
That's
Don't use
why
semicolons for anything else.
That's why I work with this guy.
But with reviewing, it's obviously we're not going to be so bad at a game that you can't finish it, because then there's no point in running the review, really, is there? Next question.
Hi. You mentioned earlier about how people get really angry at review scores, particularly they focus on the number, ignore all the words. Have you ever considered that when writing a review and been tempted or even have adjusted them because you were afraid about the backlash you would get? Like, I would have thought that the IGN review for Doom, a 7, which is heresy, by the way, that
it's a good score.
Yeah, it's good. But that kind of score, there was a lot of backlash for that, obviously. But who wrote that one, by the way?
That was
So
Job.
that was Job. He's a freelancer.
He's dead now.
Yes.
Thanks, Bethesda.
Thanks, Bethesda. No, he was a freelancer that we brought in to write that review.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I thought it might have been you. That's right.
No, it was not me.
Okay, good.
I would have personally given it. I loved him. So
Good.
You can't let that affect your score. You just can't. And if you do, you're just not doing your job properly.
And why would you want it to as well? Like, why would you want someone to go, oh, I think the game's better than it is? Like, it's their opinion, so like their opinion either means something to you or it doesn't. Like, if you're just looking for validation of what you already think about something, then there's no point in reading reviews.
Your pre-order.
And also the other thing is, I feel like I've really received pretty much the worst that the internet has to throw at me. You know what I mean? Like I have copped a lot of shit since my debut at IGN in 2012, where I wrote a piece called 10 Movies That You Love and Why They're Not That Great. Not a fantastic debut. Probably not the smartest idea.
What was number 1? Do you remember?
I think
Star Wars.
it wasn't numerical. It wasn't numerical, but I did put Forrest Gump in there, and I swear to God, I got so much shit. But yeah, I've copped a lot of crap. So now I'm just like, after the Uncharted thing, I was just like, I found it funny. I didn't even, and I suppose that comes from being somewhat seasoned. I can imagine that if you were just starting out, and it might be a different story. But yeah, for me personally, I imagine for all of you guys too, because we've been doing it for so long, you never think about the backlash. You don't take that into account.
You just wouldn't do it as a job. Like, if you actually did that, you would go, you're just looking for approval the whole time. I don't think you'd particularly last in the industry.
The important thing is follow your heart. Thank you. Next question.
When it comes to games, especially now with multi-platforms, and Arkham Knight comes into mind, especially when you have such great reviews on 2 systems on consoles, then you come to a PC game where some reviewers were going, we're not going to review it till the patch comes out. Should they be reviewing at that point? Because at the time, that's the way the game's released. Other games always improve with patches. Shouldn't it be that point you review?
Well, Arkham Knight was an interesting one because they actually pulled it from sale entirely until it got a patch. And I think most PC places do review the release version and say what it's like at that point, and then sort of update with like a news stories going forward about what happens from there, don't they?
If you're being asked to hand over your money at a particular point, that's the point that we can put a score on it, I think.
We do separate PC reviews if the PC version is dramatically different. If it's more or less the same, then we will include a paragraph later. But if the PC game is fundamentally broken, like in that instance, then we will write a separate review for the PC version.
That's much the same for us.
We also make it clear which platform we reviewed on, the little disclaimer at the bottom. This review applies only to the PlayStation version, not the PC. Sort of
But
thing.
for something as extreme as Arkham Knight, like, as a consumer, would you want... like, that game straight up didn't work for a huge amount of time, to the point, where they pulled it. Would you want a review of that game? Because what you're actually reviewing is, like, the game does not work full stop. It's a 0 because the game does not work. Like, you cannot launch it, you can't buy it, it's a 0. Is that valuable to you, since you already know that because you would have followed the news? Or is it more valuable to wait until the game does work and then you can look at it as the actual game was supposed to be? Like, you're not forgiving them for it, but you're going, okay, well, like, I can't review this until it starts working.
It's one of those arguable points. I didn't pre-order it. I saw the bad reviews, so I didn't buy it from other customers.
Yeah.
But it was on sale for a week before they pulled it. Or
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was a few days and
it's
then it was down.
That's a long time for a game to be out there, really, especially how some of them get knocked down for being fakes nowadays. But it's a tough call.
Ashes Cricket 13. Did any of you guys see or hear about that? That was remarkable. They pulled it off Steam a day afterwards and refunded everybody because it just didn't work.
I think we made some comedy videos around that.
He did.
I don't think it ever came back, did it?
It never came back. It doesn't exist anymore.
We've probably got time for one more quick question, unfortunately.
Hi, sorry, my name is Ewan. Lovely to meet you all. A few weeks ago, James, you wrote an article on the political significance of Forza Horizon 3.
I sure did.
Which unjustly, in my opinion, attracted a lot of negative feedback on Twitter. And I know Lucy got involved. I too jumped to your defense.
I sure did.
And I wondered if you guys could weigh in on, I guess, political discussion in video game writing, even including reviews as well, and whether you think there is a place in that and how about that should be handled.
Just to be clear, that was not a review. I know you didn't say it was,
it was
but
a separate analysis piece,
just because I feel like I need to say that every time I talk about this article now. Was not intended as a review. Really liked the game. Wrote a review for VG247. Liked it a lot. Political discussion is, I mean, we can't escape our personal politics. Whether we all agree with each other, you know, everyone has these views, everyone has feelings, and we can't get away from them. They influence the way that we interpret art in all forms, art and media, I think. And when I wrote that article, that was my way of working through feelings that the game brought up for me because of my personal politics. It was not intended as a comment on the quality of the game, more about how the game worked within my understanding of the world, which I think is a perfectly valid thing to do in writing.
I think, you know, absolutely, reviews are always going to be subjective. But I think I love those post-review analysis. For me, I think it's really important that we can write about games through a political lens. I think if you don't, it's just so boring. Yeah. I mean, and there are a lot of people out there who don't want us to write about games through a political lens, which is insane because games are political. I mean, God, look at Mafia 3 for God's sakes. You know, it's all about racism. Like,
just tell me about the frame rate.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if we just didn't. Imagine if we just ignored that. You know, it would be...
and they're an art as well, and we want them to be taken seriously.
Absolutely.
And video games, like movies, like music, like books, I feel like are all like inherently political discussions.
Yeah, and if a game isn't explicitly political, politics influences who we are.
I think one of the problem is the death of nuance with social media. It's very, very easy to think that Grand Theft Auto might have a problem with the way it represents women, but also that it's an awesome game. Like, these things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, it's like there's a huge echo chamber where they think everything is a zero-sum game. It has to be one or the other. It can't be both at the same time. And I think it's actually irresponsible to not call out a game because it is a piece of art, and also they are hugely influential. To not call out the bullshit that they like portray, like Grand Theft Auto, the fact that it still has such hate for women and minorities is despicable, but it's still a great game. And if you don't talk about that stuff, then it's never actually going to change. Like, you have to talk about that, but people just think because you're saying that, you're both going, Grand Theft Auto sucks and you're a bad person for playing it, and that's just not the case.
Games are great, we all love games, and they deserve to be talked about in a variety of ways.
And never pre-order anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have. Another round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Lucy, Rick, David, and James. I'm Vivina Bertrand. Enjoy your PAX, everyone. Goodbye.